You're listening to the Beat Motel Zine podcast, and we need to warn you that we use words like shit, bollocks, scrotix, fuck,
And poo hammock.
And we don't normally beat those words out. Apart from the word because we're not total animals. Now, we know as well as you that your children can hear these words on any street in Britain, possibly any street anywhere in the world, but we also appreciate that you may not want to invite these words into your home if you have children or sensitive pets nearby whilst listening to this podcast. So listener discretion is advised. That being said, if your children aren't allergic to hearing words like fuck, shit, buttocks or hind penis, they might learn something from listening to this podcast, although probably not because the quality of our educational content is quite poor. So there you go, fuckers, buckle in and let's get started. So it comes with like a paper thing that you attach each side of the toilet seat. And it's like a hammock in the middle. And you have to catch... It says like catch some poo. I don't know. Can you like start pooing and then pinch it off, or are you a kind of foolish you all at once get it done and move on?
Welcome to oversharing with Andrew culture.
I'm doing a diet test. I've got like a patch on my arm for measuring blood sugar and stuff. Back when I did care work, we used to get an empty ice cream tub and cling film, but the problem was because it was a care home, there was like 5 people living there, and you had to try and make sure you caught the right person's shit. But if you've done care work for long enough, you start to know whose shit it is just by the smell and texture anyway. But I can confirm it was my shit this time.
Father-in-law's poo. No.
I was pleased that... Oh, no, actually, I was going to go into far too much detail. But no one should ever be pleased with their own shit. I was about to say. I was pleased to... Yeah, I'm not going to go into that much detail. You'd just be sitting there just waiting to see where the line in the sand was that I wouldn't cross.
I was less interested in, like, frankly, your capturing of your feces and more interested in, like... Do you get results immediately, or are the results you have to ship things off? Post the poo.
I had to post the poo. That's gone to some poor soul in Cambridge somewhere. I apologise to whoever has to deal with my jobbies. The blood thing was really interesting. I took the plaster off today, and it actually makes a... Oh, it's actually a bit tender. It makes a cut. And then you've seen how people harvest like maple syrup? They like put something on the tree and it like gradually... It's like that, but fortunately maple syrup didn't come out of my body, but blood did. So that's been shipped off. And yeah, I've got the blood pressure, blood sugar sensor, which I think is incredible. The thing that made me bleed, do you remember when we were in Sweden, you and I, and from across... we're in a kitchen department of a massive department store, and I saw you pick up this thing that looked like a button, and you pressed down on the button, and from across the store I went, no, because you'd picked up something that you used for pricking a hole in an egg, and I can remember your face. You jumped up like someone in a cartoon, like you just sort of jumped a few inches off the floor and then just put it back. Did it have your blood on it?
I can't remember this, to be honest.
Yeah, can you not? Well, it's like one of those things to make me bleed for this test. Do you not remember that, really? It's like one of my favourite stories about shopping. Right. Yeah, but no, it is... So they've been shipped off, but I'm tracking what I eat now and watching the blood sugar spikes. Really interesting. And I did the blue poo this morning. So you get 2 cookies to eat. One of them's like the sweetest thing I've ever eaten. All right, but then it sort of measures the spike in your blood sugar. And then the next one, your lunchtime biscuit cookie, is bright blue. And so you can measure how long it takes things to go through your system. And I'd forgotten about it. When I wiped this morning, I was like, what the hell?
So it's like your first time on beetroot or something. You've made me... If I could sing... I would sing Blue Poo to the sound of, to the melody of Blue Moon.
Blue Poo.
I saw you floating alone.
You're really pleased with yourself with that. I have a roving camera today, so I'm going to keep moving it around until I'm happy with it. Yeah, that's better.
It's like you have several cameramen.
Have you seen
Camera
that?
people.
Have you seen the clip of the dude on? Oh God, no! There's a guy who there's clips of him going around, but when he connects to people on the Omegle, I think it's called. It's like an app where you just connect and you can just someone random pops up and you can have a conversation. He does that, but he's got about 15 cameras all around the room. No. Should we talk about music instead? I think I've just remembered that this is a music podcast.
Oh, I think we should keep. I think you should keep oversharing.
I think I'll keep the listeners updated on my learnings.
I'm really curious to see if it helps. That's my curiosity.
No, I'm finding it already quite exciting, quite fascinating. So yeah, there's like rolling results, and then when somebody's rummaged through me jobbies, I'll get some more details, I guess.
It's like the DNA test to find out where you're from, but like updated and with a weird new twist. Instead of sending off your spit, you send off your poo.
I have posted poo before. I mean, for medical reasons, not just like some dear electricity
Dear Prime
board.
Minister, dear local MPs, fuck you.
Oh, how funny that you'd be so angry that you wouldn't bother to find out the name of your local MP. Dear local MP. Oh man, mine was John Gummer's son, Ben Gummer.
Is that what you call your poo?
My Ben Gummer. Posted my Ben Gummer. We're off to a strong start today. I want to talk about Helsinki before we get into this, because we went last year, and dear listeners, if you go back through the archives, there is a what we call a Gonzo review. So there's a review that we recorded while we were there, while we were actually enjoying it, and we weren't so fussed this year until this morning.
Yeah, the the lineup has been, I would say, sort of a bit more old man black metal, old men in cat makeup and panda makeup shouts at clouds, and it had been quite sort of old manish in a way that I don't think either you or I been very interested by, and a bit hair metally, like a bit Euro metal, sort of again, which I don't think either of us are that bothered by, and. And then today they come out with some bangers. They come out with Meshuggah,
Yes.
and they come out with Wolfheart, who you're a massive fan of, and I have to get the pronunciation of these ones. Who else, Andrew? Who you have a hard on for?
Insomnium, Habakrunu, who I'd love to see in there. But actually, all three of those bands, Wolfheart, Habakrunu, and Insomnium, are all Finnish bands.
Yeah, and they got Terrorizer playing, which doesn't have the guitar or the original guitarist, but does have the bassist. That I don't know who's doing the vocals of the original Terrorizer album, which I have to say the drumming is astounding, considering it's drumming from prior to. It's 1989, the first album, and the drummer sounds like he could have been playing yesterday.
Before they kind of really got all the sort of compression and everything that sort of came in with a new. That's like the only good thing that came out from new metal. They got the drums right. Drums suddenly sounded good. It made everything else sound fucking awful, but.
Well, that was that. I mean, I don't think that the death metal traditions never went in that way, but they certainly, the black metal tradition certainly was a bit very clicky. I was thinking more. It sounds like this uber technical, incredibly proficient modern metal drummer, but sort of the guy pioneered the style, I guess, rather than is someone who then came afterwards.
So who's the Native American metal band?
Black Parade, who had a very hyped album last year, which was pretty good. It's sort of on the I would sort of call it the post black metal sort of aspect, where they do songs that take an eternity to get through.
But like black gaze, I think some people call it.
Along those sort of lines in my head, yeah. And then there's Gutterlax, who are Czech. I think they're Czech. a Czech poo grindcore poo obsessed band.
Just put those words in another order.
What's poo
Check your
core?
poo. Check your grind poo. Check the core of your grind poo.
Czech grindcore poo. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. There's something about me that sort of like I don't know. That's a bit. I don't know. It's sort of like that aspect of guys don't have to go there. Really,
But
it's that anal beard sort of side of things again, and I'm just sort
anal
of
core.
it's a bit. I don't know. It's just a bit cheap, really.
The thing that I find weird is that you, first of all, you told me they're like a poo themed or a scat themed grindcore band, like you were trying to sell it to me, which you know
Oh
me
right,
well.
no,
You know
no,
me
no.
well.
I'm. If anything, I'm sort of sad that they're one of the only representatives of grindcore on that. I mean, you got Terrorizer and this was a Gutterlax band, and Terrorizer, great classic. Yeah, fine. I don't know if any of their albums since that original album was any good. The guitarist went off and became the guitarist for Napalm Death in the 90s.
Wow.
And the drummer went off and became a very successful sort of drummer in death metal bands, Morbid Angel and that sort of stuff. And the bassist as well went off and was part of the early Morbid Angel thing. And then, grindcore's grindcore can be either sort of um, very challenging and but actually quite intelligent, or it can be very challenging and incredibly stupid. And I don't really care about the incredibly stupid side of it.
Just wondering what the hell. I've never seen grindcore. Do you know? I don't think I've ever seen a grindcore band, and I don't know how it's going to translate to the sort of the open air, the open arena kind of aspect of Helsinki.
Yeah, I think if they play the open air stages, the sound's just going to get lost.
And also, how sort of being poo themed? There's only so far you can go in grindcore with revealing what your theme is. You can have it in your logo somehow. And I've not spotted any poos in the logo, although it is a classic metal logo, so you have to look at it with a magnifying glass. There might be little jobbies in there.
What's
But
that album's name?
yeah, say album names and covers, but lyrics. How would anyone tell?
Um,
Sam's now looking for poo.
their last album was called The Shit Pendables, which is
That's just rubbish. That's terrible.
exactly.
I could do better than that.
They did a video back in 2017 called Art of Shitting.
Getting better.
Their second full album was called Shit Happens, and the first full album was called Shit Beast.
No shit sandwich then.
No shit sandwich, which would have been better. Yeah, they're Czech.
Blimey. Well, the problem that we've got that we've been discussing on WhatsApp this morning is that it's a 2-day festival, and you never know what's going to happen. Who's going to be on which day? So, like last time, I missed Batushka. Well, it was the wrong Batushka, but I'd still want to see them. And I think it was the wrong one. So this time, there is so many bands I want to see on this lineup, but we can't go 2 days because, well, I'm a middle-aged man, and we're both parents. I'm leaving my daughter at home, but your son is too young to go to a metal festival.
Yes, and I take my responsibilities to take care of him and be present very, very seriously.
And also, 2 days of extreme metal is possibly a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, this is the genius. Going back to, I mean, I would have loved a bit more like proper extreme metal at ATP, but this is when ATP got it right. That was sort of what was so good about it, was that it was so well mixed. It wasn't just like battering you over the head with this like one, or all the colors. There's a lot of colors of metal, at Helsinki and also Tuska, and a lot of other metal festivals, but it's a bit, at the same time, it's a bit one note, as it were. Like last year, they did a cool thing. They had a legendary Finnish hardcore band on, playing quite early on, but they still played. But there's no hardcore bands playing this year.
I'm just looking at the lineup for Tuska. Have you seen it?
It's a bit, it's not my thing.
It's going. I thought it was kind of mainstream last year. This year, Pendulum, don't know who they are. Dimmuborger Opeth. Bring Me the Horizon, though. I'm just sorry. It's not very interesting to listen to on a podcast, I know, but I'm just flicking through. Blood Red Hourglass, that was the hardcore band, wasn't it? That we saw. They're playing. But apart from that, it's quite middle of the road for metal. I'm not really seeing much there that would turn me on.
Well, it's an interesting thing. One of the biggest festivals in Finland, which last year hosted bands like Rancid and Pantera, and which is quite mixed. Obviously, like they do extreme stuff. And I think my friends in Foreseen played, who are local sort of hardcore metal band. They they yeah this festival that they played last year, that Pantera and the reformed Pantera and Rancid played, they said they're not putting on a festival this year because the bands are not there. The bands that would pull in the money, pull in the audiences, aren't touring this year.
Wow, that's just so strange. That's bizarre. Because obviously everything was so constricted during COVID, and then everyone just went nuts. So I guess people they just need a breast, bless them. Tim Armstrong around said he's not a young man.
No.
He needs time off to do.
But there's also
this
aspect of the headliners. If you look at the headliners, they're aging quite a lot. And where these particularly in like spaces of metal, you don't really get very young bands headlining that much anymore. Particularly Tuska should be doing Slipknot on top of it, sort of thing. But because that's mainstream metal, that's representative.
Well, I think Slipknot are still. I'm not a fan, but I think they are still current and they are still important and they are still actually pushing the envelope and doing something interesting. So that's kind of cool. But you're right. Like we saw Merciful Fate. Well, we saw about 20 minutes of Merciful Fate at Tuska when we went, and I was just there. It was like It's like somebody hadn't let me in on the joke. I've got so many friends who are absolutely obsessed. I mean, like almost worryingly obsessed with King Diamond's Merciful Fate. And I'm not sure I really get it. But yeah, young stuff. No. What was the name of the other festival? The one that Blur played at the same time as Helsinki? Flow Festival. I'm going to have a look at that. I do realise the best listeners are just listening to two middle-aged men booking a holiday, basically.
Well, this is how you break down barriers of professionalism. There's also Sideways, which I think is the best-looking festival this year in Helsinki. Which
there's nothing. I mean, Idols. I don't know. I run hot and cold with Idols. I think they're trying really hard to reinvent themselves. They're playing. Apart from that, there's nothing there that I don't even know what part. Oh, Fred again. PJ Harvey. PJ Harvey's always good. Always good live.
Oh no, I think I've seen. I know. I disagree. Disagree. Was it Sideways?
Quite good.
Sideways has L7, who I'd go and see. Chelsea Wolf.
I've got tickets to see Chelsea Wolf, which I'm quite excited about.
Who else? It had a few other good ones. The Armed, who I'd go and see again. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Maybe just bring the girl this time.
I want to go to Helsinki. It's just crushing me not knowing which day all the bands I want to see are playing because...
Well, we'll just have to book the festival tickets later. Oh yeah, Oransi Pazazu are playing and Pekko Kappi.
Where? Playing where?
Sideways.
I'd love to see Oransi Pazazu.
This is what I'm talking about. This is a festival that's quite mixed up between sort of alternative Finnish pop and a bit of alternative world stuff as well.
The thing is, like with festivals or gigs, there's always an element that will drive me to buy a ticket if I think it's not something that's going to be easily repeated or it's going to happen again. Yeah. We've now seen Morbid Angel at every Finnish metal festival we've been to, and a lot of the other bands they're just always available. Everything's very available. So
yeah, Yeah.
Perhaps that's the way to look at it. Going, yeah, I'd love to see Have a Crew, but I have seen them in Ipswich and they tour a lot. I'd love to see Insomnium, but I have seen them. I didn't see them in Ipswich, saw them in London. I have seen them, and then they're not going anywhere because bands are, and same with Wolfheart, to be fair. But because and Meshuggah, because bands are now career bands, as in they get a bit of get a bit of success, and the lifespan of a band can now be 30 or 40 years. Oh, you've got some of that lovely Finnish flavoured fizzy water, haven't you? Sorry, podcast
Mango and
listeners.
guava.
Oh, I genuinely miss
with
that.
Multi-vitamin B and C.
I accidentally bought the one with caffeine last time when I landed in Helsinki and got a real shock. I drank it and then started getting jittery, and I was like, "What's going on? I must be really tired." Well, perhaps that's the lens at which we should view which festival we should go to. This is such a privileged people conversation for us both to be having.
But that's So I this is again talking about privilege, but I'm going to come over to London to see this ruined Zoo band, and Zoo are one of the best bands I've ever seen, who are Italian sort of alt metal. Saxophone bass led thing.
I bought a ticket and I haven't even heard them.
Zoo, I saw them. I've seen them 3-4 times. They've been incredible twice. Absolutely, sort of mind-shatteringly good twice. And then there is Ruins, who is the drummer Yoshida Tatsuya, who is one of my favorite musicians ever, and I used to go to every single gig of his I could in London when I lived there, and I haven't. And they're playing together, and they're doing a short tour together. They're apparently writing an album together, and I don't know if that's ever going to they're ever going to do anything else apart from this tour.
That's part of the reason
make
I'm
the
going.
effort to go and see that. Yeah, and that's that. What's the other aspect? And so I find that's to me that's sort of a reason, that's an impetus to sort of go. And the part of me that sort of sees that they're playing a few gigs in, say, something like Hamburg in Germany, and I'm sort of more tempted. In a way, I'm more tempted by that to sort of have a exploration of a weekend. But that at the same time, I can't really ask friends to sort of take time off work to fly to Hamburg and spend, €400. Whereas I can come to the UK and then go and see my mum, which is a good thing to do.
I would go to Hamburg. Money's always an issue, but we don't have like big family holidays because my wife's a gardener. She has to work in the summer. I'd go for stuff like that. There's a YouTube channel I really like called TPD, and it's basically a bunch of people go to festivals all around Europe, all around the world actually. And the one I watched last night, they went to Amsterdam because they wanted to go and see Post Malone, who I'm not entirely sure who that is. It looks like the caveman character from Trailer Park Boys to me.
Oh yeah. I know of him.
But yeah, I'm looking at the Sideways lineup. I think it's pretty decent. Of course, it looks pretty nice.
And then there's also the Dutch one that is incredible.
Oh, my friend Dan Callis is going to that. Someone I work with, the most anarcho punk I know, because the lineup's fantastic. But we ought to carry on this conversation because, as is traditional, we're 20 minutes into the episode and we haven't actually even revealed what the theme of the episode is. So, no. Sam, with no drum roll at all, what is the theme of this episode? Actually, people know because they'll see the title before they listen to it, won't they?
It's just sort of sounds we like that aren't necessarily from traditional music instrumentation.
That is it.
But there's an aspect of like, to me, that it doesn't sound so obscure to make a point of it in a way.
Oh, that's a nice angle. I've just gone for sort of pleasing things, the sort of things like ear candy, I think is a horrible way of describing it. Just those little kind of, oh, that's nice. And it all comes, for me, it all comes down to the quality of a recording, how well a band is using the studio. Is taking the time to put these little bits in. I think I mentioned it on the show. I think I've mentioned on the podcast before that first Steve album, we spent a day just putting stuff in that you could only hear on headphones. And I think that layer is what turns an album into an album rather than just a very good live recording. I've been really enjoying Fucked Up recently. It's called Hidden World. I don't know which, they've released so many albums, but the one the one that they blew up with. And God, that album is so good. It's got so much going in it. It's. We might have to do a Perfect Albums Part 2 because we did Perfect Albums ages ago, and I think I might have to include that. It's just got so much thought and love put into the production. Right, should we kick this off with your first choice?
Sure.
Oh no, we haven't done Riff of the Week. Yeah, shitting hell. Right, here's your this thing. Fucking hell, that is so good. There's getting all excited. There's so much to love. That drumming when it kicks in and then just that one splash. Who is that?
That is Year of the Knife. The song is Your Control. And I have recently discovered this album. Their album came out last year, and I think last year they were also in a horrific bus crash.
Oh,
which
God.
The singer, who had just joined the band, or fairly recently joined the band, is still recovering from having sort of intense physiotherapy to get back from it. And I think that fed into the album, if I understand it correctly. But it is an incredibly solid piece of I don't know, metallic, literally metallic hardcore, because it does that whole beat down thing. There's not a lot of, like, when I say metalcore, I think of like harmonies and all this sort of crap. They don't do that.
All this sort of crap.
It's beat down. It's like guerrilla music. It's what I think of as guerrilla music, and it's like, it's that, going back to Sick of It All, who we talked about last time. The Sick of It All turned up to another few notches and a bit more metal, but they still do a lot of hardcore based stuff, and the album is just the shit. It's brilliant.
I'm absolutely going to listen to that. My Riff of the Week, I don't really have so much of a story around it. My mate Rocky just sent me a link and went, "This is good." So I don't know anything about the band, and I've only heard the song, well, a couple of times, but it's not as good as yours. I know it's not a competition, Sam, but if I'm honest, my Riff of the Week is not as good as yours. I am going to go and listen to Year of the Knife. That was extremely pleasing. So here's my choice. I love that it cuts just as the vocal comes in. I like that little squirrely do 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 do.
It's great, clean production.
It's lovely. They are called Necro Wretch, and
I thought that.
You know that name?
No, I was like, is this Cradle of Filth?
Oh no, God, that'd be interesting. I don't closely follow Cradle of Filth, if I'm honest. I probably see Danny in person more than I actually ever consider listening to Cradle of Filth, which sounds really damning. But you can't love everything. Right, so let's go on for your first choice. Do 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 do. So much to love. Tell me who that was.
That was Charles Mingus, Wednesday night prayer meeting from the album Blues and Roots. And he does. I think they're making a point that it's sort of, it's like a prayer meeting. It's like a quite a spiritual sort of moment, and therefore you can sort of hear these sort of shouts out of like people getting taken away by the spiritual aspect of the music. And I think it is Charles Mingus basically pushing his band to play, sort of, encouraging them. But and because he does that, you can get that in a few tracks that he does, like, you hear the recording process of him sort of going, "Yeah, come on."
Actually, hear
But
him
it
talk
adds such
to the band.
shout enthusiastically. So if you listen to that again, you can sort of hear, these vocals in the background, and it just adds this sort of real like level of atmosphere, and it's so cool to hear sort of people enjoying themselves. What I take as sort of hearing people is enjoy themselves and getting really into the moment of it.
That's what a great opener. That's a lovely thing. So the sound isn't an instrument; it's just the general cheerleaderiness of Charles Mingus.
I think that's how I take it. I haven't done that much research to figure out who's doing what in the vocals, but the vocals, like you get a version of that and you can take the vocals out and it sounds great as well. But you put the vocals in, it just gives it this level of like, oh, that's really like, it gives you this intensity of them actually being in the studio and recording it. And
you know what? I know I said it's not a competition, but yeah, your first choice is better than my first choice. Mine's literally, I thought this sound was pretty. Let's have at it. That is Little Dragon with Ritual Union, and I chose it just because I like that. But listening to it on headphones, there's loads of other stuff in there that I've never heard before. I've obviously never listened to it on headphones, but when that album came out, they're Swedish. They're one of those sort of electronic bands that they're not a band, they're a collective, sort of get together every now and then and spend a month in a studio or whatever and come out with something. But when that album came out, I just found that sound really pleasing. See, I told you it wasn't as intellectual as yours. You're talking about texture and stuff, and
well, that is texture. That is, that's a big part of all these choices. That's a massive part of the sound of that song. And if it wasn't, they wouldn't put it so high in the mix.
It is shockingly high in the mix, actually, isn't it? They've gone on to be massive. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to move on to yours because I'm really curious about why you've chosen this one. Because it's quite quiet and stuff. Is that a balalaika or something?
No, it's a harp. That's a harp being played by pendulums.
What now?
Yeah.
So you ought to say who that is first.
Well, it's obviously Bjork.
Well, yeah. That's
fucking cretin doesn't know it's Bjork. Sorry, cretins. I thought we couldn't do this without having at least a bit of Bjork. One of my favorite albums by her is this, the one that is basically very little. I think this to me was the last genius. The last time Bjork was absolutely genius. It's from the album Biophilia, and it's not that the last few albums haven't been bad. They haven't just not been as interestingly and innovative as Biophilia. And so Wikipedia says a group of pendulums were put together creating patterns with their moves, transmitting the movements of the earth to the sound of a harp, making the song Solstice, is what we just heard. The pendulums used to make the song make tribute to the Foucault pendulum. And also on that album, she also plays for the song Thunderbolt. She plays the Tesla coil
Oh wow.
for the bass note, and it's the whole album sort of a lot of the album is themed around sort of finding different ways to sort of get nature into a more like a more human sounding in a way, human sounding uh, aspects of nature into a more human sounding sort of soundscape. And I just thought we couldn't really talk about interesting innovations and instrumentations without talking about Bjork, because she has been incredibly interesting.
She absolutely has. A Tesla call nearly made me shit myself once. I got stuck in Munich after working there, missed our flight, and we went to the mining and technology museum in Munich, which is amazing. I walked into this room like, oh, why is it dark in here? And we didn't know someone was giving a Tesla coil demonstration, and when it went off, I screamed. Just walked into the room, like, dude, what's going on here? And this thing went bang, and I went, ah! And everyone turned around and looked at me, and I shuffled out again. But going back to Bjork, just to stay away from the subject of my arse for a minute. I'm the right age to have had a massive teenage crush on Bjork. I mean, she was on my school pencil case. There was pictures of her up in my room, and just thought she was incredible. And when the Sugar Cubes split up, although they always maintained they weren't a band, they were just a collective, I can remember being really gutted. And then they're like, oh, and Bjork was saying, I'm going to do electronic stuff now. And like, this is a time when I was a really indie kid. And I was like, oh, God, not that shit. It's just like brain dead music. And then the first album came out, and I was like, this really, really interesting. There's just something really interesting here. And then very recently, I saw a documentary on YouTube, a guy called Trash Theory, who does brilliant documentaries. And he was putting forward the theory that Bjork, with the first album, kind of scared herself, because she'd gone from being in this quirky, the Sugar Cubes were like the ultimate geeky indie band. No one had heard of them. If you saw someone with a Sugar Cubes t-shirt, and you'd be like, you always want to go, like now, if you see some of the obscure metal band t-shirt, somebody will come up to you and go, oh, it was like that kind of level. And then the first album came out, and it just was huge. And I think the second one might have been bigger. But the theory was that she scared herself, and she was like, she didn't like it, and she didn't like being that popular. And there was loads of weird stuff at the time. She was going out with Goldie, and she lamped some woman in an airport, and it was just clearly too much. She wasn't prepared for that. So the theory is that from that point on, she really lent into just really experimenting, and putting the emphasis on not doing something that was a radio friendly unit shifter. And I think, fucking hell, did she ever achieve that? There's old videos of her on YouTube with these funny little, quite difficult to use little sequences and things, and just like tape all over the floor, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I think she's one of those sort of very, very few people who exist both within sort of pop culture but also within compositional culture. She's sort of, I think, as far as I can understand, she's very highly regarded as sort of like, she's sort of made a space for herself. She is Bjork.
Yeah, she's a genre in her own right, isn't she?
Yeah, in the same way that Primus is.
Okay, fair enough. I'd go with that. Have you seen the film that she made?
Which one?
She's only been in one film. I've not seen it. A friend of mine, I know several people have seen it, and said it's the most depressing film they've ever seen.
Oh, I think. Yeah.
And apparently Bjork was so difficult to work with, the director stopped making films. Literally, like, just quit being a director. He I don't know, now works in M&S or something.
Is that Dancer in the Dark?
That's it, yeah. Absolutely miserable, apparently. And she didn't have a good time either. So it's one of those films you think, I guess once you've got funders and whatever, you have to carry on, even if everyone's having a miserable time. But other Bjork genius things that are now almost taken for granted. There's a version of her album that there was an app version of it, so you could basically make
for this album.
It was by affiliate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much that we could probably do just a
Well,
Bjork
she got someone
celebration.
to put together. She got someone to put together. I was looking up this album. She got someone to put together like two different instruments to sort of create them. One of the key sort of instruments for the album, and it's rather than being played by human hand, it's played by app.
It's funny when I clipped that, when I prepared that clip, it really reminded me of something that I've done on an album and used to do on stage every now and then. There's Nintendo DS, the little fold up Nintendo things. You can pick those up for like a $5 with a load of games at the moment. We have been able to for a while. I've got a box for them, to the extent that my niece and nephew had one between them that they were fighting over, and I just went, "Yeah, have another." I just bought. I'm old enough now to know that when that sort of tech gets cheap, just buy like a bunch of them, even if you don't use them. But at least you can. And there's a game that I imported from Japan called Ectoplankton, and you never get these things in the UK. I don't know why Nintendo or whoever doesn't ever release them in the UK, but it's a cartridge. Obviously, it's not really a game. You put it in the Nintendo, and it's got 10 random controllable music makers. And the one I've used on stage it's a like a little plant with leaves on it, and you can change the direction of the leaves, and little fish go wee. They shoot out this spout one side, and they bounce down the leaves, and all the leaves are different. Hello, thank you. Sorry, someone just brought something in. All the leaves are different notes, and according to the angle of the leaves, according to the sort of the timbre of it. And there's another one where it's lots of arrows, and there's these little sprites, and you change the direction of the arrows, and each one of them is a note, and as they bounce against things, and that really, really reminded me of that, to the extent that I was like, shit, did I just rip that off? Probably. But
there are no new ideas.
There are no new ideas. Let's go with that. Let's go on to my next choice, which again, I'm such a sometimes I look at these and it does flip both ways sometimes. But sometimes I look at my choice compared to yours and think, I am such a fucking simpleton. Oh, lovely. That was, you might know who it is. I don't assume.
Tell me.
Pompoko.
Oh.
Named after a Studio Ghibli film. I think they are Swedish. Second Swedish choice of the week.
Norwegian.
And I saw them at Brighton the Corners, the Ipswich Music Festival, and just absolutely fell in love with them. There's something about them. They're, guitar, bass, drums, singer, but they're I don't know, just gorgeous. Sometimes it's really hard to explain why you like something, but that little guitar bit, when I first heard it, I thought that's cool, and then I thought about it and I tried to play it, and you can't play it. It goes from too low to too high to play on a guitar. And then I saw them live. I fucking did play it, but I think my theory, I was trying to figure out. I think it's using a whammy pedal. Famously used by Malmsteen and that lad from Rage Against the Machine, because you can go from very low, you can go up by like 8 octaves if you want. And I think that's kind of how to do, because he had his hand in one place.
A whammy is not note, it's tone.
Hey?
A whammy bar doesn't fuck with your note, it fucks with the tone.
A whammy bar does.
Oh, whammy bar.
Whammy pedal.
Sorry. Whammy pedal.
Digitech make a pedal called the Whammy, and it does. It works like a wah wah, but it allows you to sweep through octaves, and you choose how many octaves. And I've got one. Mine's also got a thing called the Drop on it, which is another Digitech pedal that's used by loads of bands like Russian Circles and people. And you can play. You have your guitar tuned in E, and you switch on this pedal, and it will detune it to B or C or whatever. And the reason bands do it is because it's much easier to play a guitar that's tuned to E than it is a guitar that's tuned to B. So I bought a guitar and had it set up for B, and it is difficult to play. It's really hard to stay in tune because the strings have to be so loose. So yeah, it's the same pedal you use. You just, then found out you just switch on a thing and just play a normal guitar, but it's detuned.
Oh,
So there you
that's
go.
cool.
You've learned something. It's one of those
sounds like fun.
It's the sort of thing that I want to use it on stage with synths, because that sweep, as you heard on that thing, that sort of sweep is so dynamically on stage. It can sound so good. I always think, considering I like black metal, I always like bands that have that real dynamic shift, which you kind of don't really get in black metal a lot, but it tends to be get a good sound and carry on with it. But I love stuff that just sort of fucks around with the dynamics, because it's a lot more interesting to watch.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I think is sort of I sort of frequently feel is missing from a lot of bands these days, is that they find a sound and they keep to it, and it's a bit like what's it, John Cleese's idea that you can only have 24 different situations for a sitcom. Why bother doing anything after that, even if he is now shat on his own legacy with his new Fawlty Towers series?
No, hasn't got a new series, surely not.
Yeah, with his daughter or something like that.
Why? First of all, he becomes a Tory tease. I was going to say Tory cheesemaker. That's Alex James.
I think it's this. He's always been a cantankerous old cunt, but
Sam. Right, what was the timestamp?